This Guy's Garage. Like and subscribe.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and it is my pleasure to rise in the House today and share my thoughts and those of my constituents on Bill C26. Bill C26 is a risky and tricky piece of legislation, and I'm very pleased again that I have this opportunity. You know, on the one hand, we have serious and growing issues of cybersecurity, and on the other hand, we have the importance of personal privacy. We also have questions related to government accountability and oversight. And I'm sorry to say that this government has not done a stellar job on either one of those fronts to date. But I'm hoping, and I'm hopeful, that members of this House can work together collaboratively to craft a piece of legislation around what's been proposed here as Bill C26 that balances both of those vital yet often competing priorities. Madam Speaker, I grew up in the 1960s under the specter of the Cold War. When I was a kid, the threat of foreign attack came from the air above us, that of nuclear missiles from Russia or China. While our adversaries remain the same, and current events have sadly brought about the specter of nuclear disaster to the forefront again, the method of attack to which we are most susceptible today is far more sophisticated and far more insidious. Rather than bombs from the air above us, the weapons of our enemies are in the air all around us. Men and women sitting at computers in dark rooms, government agencies, or at the local library, sitting at computers, sending out digital viruses, cancers that would attack the internet, telecommunication waves, and platforms to which we've become reliant on to what I would consider is probably an unhealthy degree. And that is where I'll pause for a moment, because I think the best thing that we can do is the first step that we can to secure our national security and the well-being of Canadians is what nobody wants to do, and that's probably to take just a little step backwards and take a look at this. We need to divest ourselves of our all-consuming reliance on digital platforms, devices, and infrastructure, and ensure that our most vital infrastructure always has a physical fail-safe to fall back on. Let me give an example. Let's talk about digital currency for a second. Digital currency exists. Most Canadians have a credit card, a debit card, and online banking. I do. I use it. It's convenient. But that's not to say for a minute that I think progress demands that we do away with hard currency. Exactly the opposite. The more reliant Canadians become on digital currency forms of digital IDs, smartphones, smart cars, smart homes, smart cities, smart moms, smart banking, smart hospitals, the really smart thing to do is to ensure that we always maintain physical infrastructure and to ensure that we are in control and not crippled by the worst that could happen. Because nothing is impenetrable. No matter how good, how amazing the technology that we create, no device, no platform, no code that has been created can ever not be hacked. Anything people make, people can break, and if they can't, they'll develop a machine that can break it. I was reminded of a story last week of a military computer called Stuxnet. Stuxnet single-handedly destroyed 1/5 of Iran's nuclear centrifuges. And actually, that's not totally correct. It was the worm that Stuxnet was that caused the sophisticated machines to self-destruct. It got into their system, learned how they operated, and then caused the powerful turbines to spin in reverse, shredding the machines. You know, we have AI, artificial intelligence, so advanced that it can make decisions that the people who created that technology don't even know how that came about. They can't even tell them. It's a little bit scary, Madam Speaker. Digitized records are important. We've all come to rely on that, but I believe keeping a hard copy is also important. Ensuring that we maintain a hard physical currency is very important, and that we recognize the value of currency produced by our Royal Canadian Mint. Ensuring our power grid still has physical switch. That our hospitals and our banking systems can't be crippled by a bright kid with a laptop or a foreign actor with a more malicious intent. This government has been very slow to address cyber threats. Under their watch, the CRA was hacked. They said 5,000 accounts, and yet that number turned out to be 50,000. They didn't address the issue. Lots of excuses from the minister. What really happened? Well, 1 year later it happened again, and then another 10,000 Canadians had their personal data accessed by hackers. Last year, the National Research Council was hacked. I'm sure after this past week, the government is tired of talking about foreign interference in our elections, so I won't even belabor that point, except to say that we did have foreign interference in our elections. The Prime Minister knew about it and he did nothing. And worse than that, he still refuses to tell Canadians the truth about what he knew and when he knew it. Like everything else, he refuses to take responsibility. And I wonder sometimes just how much longer those on the government benches will allow him to do so. I'll bet that right now the Reform Act is looking pretty attractive to them. Last year, Rogers' network went down suddenly. Canadians couldn't access their banking. Businesses couldn't function. Emergency services were affected. Now Rogers and the government said it was a glitch, a hack. Well, we'll probably never know for sure, but the effect was the same: chaos. And that's what our enemies want. And we do have enemies, both foreign and domestic. People who want to see anarchy and cause chaos, fear, division. Sounds eerily familiar. What legislative response have we seen from the government to date? No, seriously, I'm asking because when I think back over the past 7 years that they've been in power, I'm not aware of any substantive action, either proactive or reactive, that they've taken to address our cybersecurity and the glaring vulnerabilities that exist in that. To that end, I'm glad that we are now finally having this important discussion. We need to beef up our security system. We need to beef up our cybersecurity system, and we need to keep Canadians safe. As the government always says, Canadians have a right to be safe and a right to feel safe. The obvious irony that they only say it when it is clear, when they only reiterate that when Canadians are neither safe or feeling safe. And Canadians should be able to feel safe, and they should be safe, and they should be able to have safety and confidence in the cybersecurity system that they rely on. My time is almost gone, and that's a shame, Madam Speaker, because there's so many things that we need to talk about this bill, but I'm confident that my colleagues will be able to further articulate some of the concerns inside of this bill. But I do want to say one word about privacy. Many Canadians are concerned about the ever-increasing size and scope and reach of government in this country. This Prime Minister has increased the size of government by some 30%. And this bill gives such sweeping powers to the government that it's prompted numerous civil liberty groups, including the Canadian Civil Liberties Association, the International Civil Liberties Association or Monitoring Group, and the Privacy and Access Council of Canada, in addition to several others and groups and academics, to express their very serious concerns about this legislation. They call this legislation deeply problematic. And that's because the risks inside of this bill undermine the privacy rights of Canadians and the principles of accountable governance and judicial due process. Boy, that's a lot to unpack just in one sentence. And I'll say it again. They call this legislation deeply problematic because it risks undermining the privacy rights of Canadians and the principles of accountable governance and judicial due process. 3 years ago, had this legislation come forward, I would have probably said this was a no-brainer, let's get it done, national security triumphs personal privacy. But after the past 3 years, Madam Speaker, after the violations of civil liberties, even basic liberties that we've witnessed over the past 3 years from this government, I wouldn't be so eager to just say, let's just get her done. The government overreach, the control, and the abject absence of even a semblance of accountability. As vital as our national security is, this government, these ministers, the Prime Minister, simply cannot be trusted with more power. And that is what this bill does, Madam Speaker. It gives the government of the day more power through the Governor and Council and through its agencies to establish regulations and to further limit and restrict the freedoms and privacy of individual Canadians. It is my hope, Madam Speaker, as members in this House, that we can strike the right balance after hearing from all sides and craft a piece of legislation that accomplishes everything that we want in it, everything that we need in it. But as it stands, Bill C26 gives way too much power to a government that has proven time and time again that they are unable and unworthy to wield it.